What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 7. Sleepers and studs.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you a sleeper pick and my favorite stud at each position.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, NFL Week 7. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So studs on the slate, we went over these guys in our earlier videos. I like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. And remember, Dak Prescott is going to make his return this week, so he's an interesting play. But one of the studs I'm looking at this week is Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens playing the Cleveland Browns, who have the 8th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson has averaged 27 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9.3 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 8% owned, projected at 24 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's 8,000 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Ravens favored by 6.5. Now, Lamar Jackson has scored 18, 16, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 12, and 11 rush attempts. Now, I think Lamar Jackson can go off for 25 plus fantasy points in this matchup. He's getting a ton of rush attempts, and it's just a matter of time until he breaks a big one for a touchdown run and gobbles up those fantasy points. I think he's poised for a breakout week, so I like Lamar Jackson here versus the Cleveland Browns. Okay, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Jimmy Garoppolo from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo has averaged 15.6 fantasy points per game on the season. He's getting an average of 2 rush attempts per game, only going to be about 4% owned, projected at 16.7 fantasy points here in Week 7. I think he can go for 20 plus fantasy points this week. He's only 5,500 DraftKings salary. He's 1,700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49 points scored in this game, with the 49ers trailing by 2. So Jimmy Garoppolo has scored 19, 18, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks. He got 3, 1, and 1 rush attempts in those games. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo's got a new toy in Christian McCaffrey at running back. Now, this is going to be his first game. We don't know how much he's going to play. Maybe get 12 to 15 touches. But either way, it should help the cause for Jimmy Garoppolo in their offense. He's got a fantastic matchup in a high-scoring game. Low ownership, low salary. So I like Jimmy Garoppolo here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So the stud that I like is Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Derrick Henry has averaged 19.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 20.8 rush attempts per game and 2.8 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 12% owned, projected at 18.9 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's 8,200 DraftKings salary, 1,000 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 42 points scored in this game, with the Titans favored by 2.5. Now, Derrick Henry has scored 30, 27, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 28, 22, and 20 rush attempts on top of 2, 5, and 6 pass targets. So monster volume. He's got a good matchup this week. So I like Derrick Henry here versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, now at the running back position, it was kind of hard to find a sleeper pick, but I think the guy that makes the most sense here, even though you're not going to save a ton of salary on this pick, take a look at Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers playing the Washington Commanders, who have the 13th worst defense overall, give up the 13th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, and Aaron Jones has averaged 14.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 11.7 rush attempts per game and 3.8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 62% of the snaps, going to be about 2% owned, projected at 14.9 fantasy points here in week 7. He's $7,600 DraftKings salary, and he's $800 less on FanDuel. So I love that FanDuel price. Just take a look at the scoring log for Aaron Jones. He's put in one monster game here in week 2. He scored 35 fantasy points. Outside of that, he touched on 17.5 fantasy points versus the Patriots. So we know Aaron Jones has some pretty big upside, but his ownership is low because he only scored 7, 10, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games, up a 9, 13, and 16 rush attempts on top of 4, 3, and 4 pass targets. So we're not seeing the volume that we want to see out of Aaron Jones the past couple of games, but he did get 20 touches and then 16 touches, and then last week trickled down to only 13 touches. But that's why I think he's a good sleeper pick. We know he's got monster upside, just hard to play at that salary on DraftKings, but on FanDuel I think he's a fantastic sleeper pick. So I like Aaron Jones. Oh, the Green Bay Packers. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 41 points scored in this game, with the Packers favored by 5. So it's possible that the game script goes his way and the Packers get out to a touchdown or 2 touchdown lead here, and they end up running the ball more often than not. So I like Aaron Jones here versus the Washington football team, or the Washington Commanders. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. One of the studs that I like is Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Michael Pittman Jr. has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 10.4 pass targets per game. On the field for 85% of the snaps, gonna be about 7% owned, projected at 15.3 fantasy points here in week 7. He's $7,400 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's gonna be 42 points scored in this game, with the Colts trailing by 2.5. Now Michael Pittman Jr. has scored 29, 11, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 16, 8, and 6 pass targets. So I like the volume the past couple of weeks, especially last week with 16 pass targets. Hard to argue there. Now he's got a fantastic matchup And the game script looks pretty good here. It should be a close, competitive game. So I like Michael Pittman Jr. here versus the Tennessee Titans.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, now a sleeper pick that I like at the wide receiver position is Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the second worst defense overall. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Brandon Ayuk has averaged 12.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.3 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 91% of the snaps, going to be about 5% owned, projected at 12.5 fantasy points here in week 7. He's $6,000 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel. So I like that price on both sites. And we like that this is going to be a high-scoring game. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49 points scored in this game, with the 49ers trailing by 2. Now, Brandon Ayuk scored 28, 9, and 8 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 11, 4, and 4 pass targets. So I like that he got 11 pass targets last game. Now, with the introduction of Christian McCaffrey, that could open up some big plays for Brandon Ayuk down the field. He's got a fantastic matchup in what should be a close, competitive game and a high-scoring game. So there's a lot to like about this pick this week. So I like Brandon Ayuk here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. So I think this is a good game to stack. And this is the player you want to own from the Chiefs. So the stud that I like is Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the San Francisco 49ers have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing tight ends. But Travis Kelce has averaged 22.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.7 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 79% of the snaps, gonna be about 5% owned. I think that ownership is a little bit low. I think it's because his price tag has been creeping up there, but he's absolutely worth every dollar of this $8,000 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel, projected at 17.8 fantasy points here in week 7. I think he can go for 22 plus fantasy points once again here this week. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 49 points scored in this game, with the Chiefs favored by 2. Travis Kelce is the Kansas City Chiefs offense. He scored 22, 34, and 24 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks off of 10, 8, and 10 pass targets. So I like Travis Kelce here versus the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, so a sleeper pick at the tight end position, I like Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers playing the Washington Commanders, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing tight ends, but Robert Tonyan has averaged 9.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.3 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 5% owned, projected at 9.2 fantasy points here in week 7. He's $4,100 DraftKings salary, $1,400 more on FanDuel. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 41 points scored in this game, with the Packers favored by 5. Now, Robert Tonyan has scored 19, 6, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 12, 4, and 2 pass targets. So I love that he got 12 pass targets last week. I think he's worth playing again here this week as a sleeper pick, just to see if he can come anywhere close to that target number. If he can get 8+ targets in this game, he should have no problem paying off his price tag. So I like Robert Tonyan here versus the Washington Commanders.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite
player for this NFL slate.
I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.